When we are divided, how can the world be right? When we are confronted with evidence of evil, what should we do? When we see the destruction wrought by great evil, what should we believe? Before I delve into these questions this morning, I want to thank Beth Snordham and Les Pulgar, who were the inspiration for me over the last couple years of asking that we devote an entire service to Yom HaShoah. And it's in their honor that I want us to just take a moment of honoring them and their bravery. I also want to honor each and every one of you, especially those of you who read ahead and actually knew what the service was about and came anyway. And also those of you who didn't know and have stayed, even through what is going to be an uncharacteristically long service. Because we know that to engage with the destructive side of human doing is not easy, and that we can't understand it. And when we can't understand something as thinking people, we often just want to push it away. But we can't do that. We can't do that. It is only at our peril that we fail to witness something as immense as HaShoah and to witness the power of human evil doing. So thank all of you, because you are a testimony to the heart of this community. Why should we remember? It's not a polite question, but if we're honest, we know that we have all asked that question at times. When the hurts, the anguishes, and the wounds are our own, or when they're someone else's, it's easier not to. To bury it, to bury ourselves, to distract ourselves in work or play, in alcohol or other addictions. These realities such as HaShoah provide great challenges for thinking people, because you cannot make sense out of anything so large as the havoc to the human family that it represents. And because we are afraid to live in a world where we know that evil still exists, both at the societal and individual levels, we are afraid that we might not be able to figure it out, and we are afraid that we might be able to. Norbert Elias lost both of his parents in HaShoah, and he devoted his adult life to the study of violence in society. He developed a theory called the civilizing theory, which tracks the level of violence over time, and he's looked at it over centuries, not just decades. And he and other scholars have affirmed statistically that violence, interpersonal violence, despite what our deceptively invasive and factually shallow media tell us, is actually declining. Why? Very much in support of what Les just mentioned. Our ability to see each other as people, but specifically in two ways. His research shows that it's because of the rise of larger, more organized, less feudal governments that give us the space to be in relationship with each other that we actually couldn't be back in the days when we did not have that kind of organization. And it is also our growing norms which say that there are certain things that we will not tolerate as human beings. Elias's way of finding meaning in the face of his parents' death to the Nazis was to study and find a way past the divisions which destroyed his parents' lives. Now, we know that religions have labeled many things as evil: dancing, playing cards, defying traditions, a virtual catalog of things that involve sex. Our culture teaches us, though, that evil is something that is beyond our control. It's somewhere over here. It's a force other than us, and it can thus not be lessened. Acts of extreme violence which dehumanize people are one occurrence for which there is no other name fitting except for the name of evil. You know, a few weeks after the attacks on September 11th, 2001, a group of us in the Charlottesville church began meeting in the room we called the parlor to talk about evil. There was a certain oddness to me that we were sitting in the parlor talking about evil, but we did. We argued, we intellectualized, we looked at other events in our country's history and how such great harm was allowed. We asked questions such as, when we're divided, what resources do we have? What does our faith teach us about our evil? What are we teaching our children? Are we giving them the tools that they need, or are we only talking about life's promise and possibility and then sending them out unprepared in a world that offers real evil as well? We realized that a good religion focused on unity has its challenges when it comes to thinking about these deep rifts and divisions in human history. We cry together, and we were silent together when words failed us. Good is what is produced when people come together. Evil is the absence of good. In its mild form, it's a lessening of good, a slight tearing, a slight division. In its most pernicious forms, such as those we have been considering today, it is an absence, a rending of the fabric. It is what divides us. It is what allows us to see another as the other, and thus allows us to do harm to one another in other forms of life because we cannot see the humanity or the value of that form of life. And we are taught. We are taught to turn away from evil because it's of a different nature than we are. And yet what may actually be true is that it's not something out there. It's a capacity within as innate as our own capacity for connection and meaning-making. And it's caused as much by indifference and apathy as by anything else, as political theorist Hannah Arendt demonstrated through her famous research, which showed that the spread of Nazi doctrine, which claimed those 6 million lives, had its greatest impact because it became a systematic and bureaucratic reality. Indifference. Indifference in the face of Hashoah or any other great example of human misdeed is itself a separate evil. Indifference perpetuates division and the kind of soul-killing that is the more eye-level form of evil. It's the way that neighbors and others turn a blind eye when they know that there's something wrong going on in the house next door. It's the way that people who begin in loving partnership turn against one another, the way that elders are exploited, the way that we can treat those who work in certain jobs or play certain roles in our society as if they were less than. Whatever it is, and how uncomfortable it makes us, we cannot avoid the existence of evil in our world. Almost 70 years after the liberation of the Nazi death camps, we still have not found a common understanding about how or whether to see evil. Now, I have not personally felt the presence of evil in a long time, until last summer, when I was part of a small delegation that spent less than an hour with Sheriff Joe Arpaio in his infamous prison in Arizona. And that is what I felt. Because he is so separate from the people he has control over, so devoid of mercy, so unable to see the humanity of the prisoners who depend on his leadership for their lives. He is so absorbed in his own narrative that he does not have the room for the story of anyone else. And in his entourage, his followers who came with him as a cloud wherever we went, I suddenly knew what Hannah Arendt meant. She herself escaped the Nazi arm only through one of those illegal visas which brought her to the U.S. I understood what she meant when she talked about the banality of evil, the day-to-day, humdrum choice to dehumanize, because I saw it right before me. In this precious religious community, we come together for many reasons, many of which are about connection, about creating together possibilities we could not have known alone. The very flaming chalice that we light each week carries with it that will to bring together that which has been rent asunder, because the chalice was first used as a symbol in war-torn Germany, created by a Jewish refugee as a sign that its bearers could be trusted to give shelter. We as religious liberals need to wrestle with the hard but true fact that there is evil and that we must be witness to its power. We and our children need to be part of repairing that fabric of the world because it is essential. Key to understanding all of this is to debunk what Steven Pinker, who is a social scientist, calls the myth of pure evil. He writes, "The alternative to the myth of pure evil is that most of the harm that people visit on one another comes from motives that are found in every normal person. And the corollary is that much of the decline in interpersonal violence comes from people exercising these motives less often, less fully, or in fewer circumstances." What he believes is that essential to our continued progress as a people on an increasingly small globe is that we ever expand the circle of empathy and combine that with a sense that people have rights and that we need to exercise the self-control and reason that we need to live together in this world. In other words, he says we forget the existence of evil at our own peril. We forget at our own peril. In my earliest days and years, I encountered dehumanization and diminishment strong enough for me and the few who knew my actual situation to call it evil. I felt that fear, I felt that isolation, what it perpetuates, and I felt the burn of acid on my soul. I was one of those teens who almost didn't make it out. I was saved by good friends, education, and later by good work. And then in my 20s, I found Unitarian Universalism. People sometimes ask me how I can work as hard as I do and still seem to enjoy it. Here's the truth. If your life has been lost and then it's been found, you never forget that. In caring and connecting with others through the examples of truth that I learned here through other people, I stitched myself back together. And I stand in awe of those families that we heard from this morning, who knew evil at its most powerful, not just the taste that I got. My scars are insignificant at their sight, and yet I know that evil has a long half-life, and I know that I must continue throughout my life to do whatever can be done to dispel it. When we are divided, how can the world be right? When we are confronted with evidence of evil, what should we do? When we see the destruction wrought by great evil, what should we believe? Well, here's what I think. Evil is not supernatural. It's all too disturbingly natural and, in fact, part of our nature if we are not attentive. When we are divided from one another, incapable of seeing our common humanity across the veneer of difference, then none of us is immune to the capacity to do great harm. That's the bad news, but it's also the good. Because if evil is our poison, then its antidote is also in our actions. If we have the capacity to tear and divide the fabric of humanity, we also have the capacity to stitch it back up again. We, the holders of memory, do not forget. We are the ones who know that you cannot put something back together again if you do not touch the torn piece. We are the messengers of hope who shine a beacon into the days to come and spread the illumination of understanding into the unseen past. And though we are people of reason, we are the ones brave enough to stand before the incomprehensible as people of faith who believe, at the very least, we can make some difference. So let us remember, let us mend. Let us stand against evil in all its forms. So may it be, and so may we be in its service.